Welcome to the Be Who You Need to Be podcast, where we examine all aspects of our lives, such as family, career, and especially health. You're listening to episode 6, where I reflect on my podcast hiatus and talk about being who I need to be. Let's get started. Hi, friends, and welcome to the podcast. As you can see, it's just me today. I don't have a guest on this podcast, and the reason why is because I wanted to talk to you about what was going on in my life. As you can see, it's been a while since I've released a podcast. And the reason why is because I was actually recording the 6th episode of this podcast, but it seemed like the universe was against me. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. And I feel so bad. Jess Brown and I were recording a podcast, and it just seemed that her audio was off. Mine was. The video, we had connection issues, and it just seemed like it was just so much. It wasn't effortless at all to record that podcast, and everything just kept going wrong. So at that point in my life, I was feeling very overwhelmed and fatigued and feeling like I really can't be present with people. I was getting frustrated with people very easily, and I was slipping in and out of depression. I have depression, as a lot of people that I know also have depression as well too. And with that, I was starting to feel a little off. I was thinking, could this be perimenopause? And so I stopped coaching at that point. I told all my clients, that I was going to take a break, and that I would come back when I was ready and, let them know that I'm ready to start coaching again. And with that, that's because I couldn't be really present for my clients. So what I did is I actually went to go see a doctor just to rule out any physical issues or anything. And I also started to see a therapist just to work through my feelings. And it seemed that I was at a point of feeling almost burnt out in life. And I know that stress and the elements can do wonderful things. It can create diamonds and pearls, but the problem is what it does in your own body is not as beautiful. So when I went to go see the doctor, they ran several tests, and they were trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And my diagnosis came to be that I have masses or tumors in my stomach, and they're caused by stress. These are not cancerous at all, which is great to hear that they're non-cancerous, but they're about a ½ inch a piece. There's 2 of them. And one of them sits actually right on top of my left adrenal gland. And if you know about anything about your adrenal glands, they tend to balance or regulate your hormones. And when you've got a problem with one or both of them, that means that your hormones can be completely off, and it can stress you out. It can take everything out of whack. And I was going through those cycles of crying for no reason and, really feeling tired and done and overwhelmed and everything. My doctor just told me, don't stress. And that was stressful to me to figure out, how do I not stress? So I started to look at, what are the causes of my stress? What is the root cause of my stress? And it was work. It was also trying to be a good or perfect mom. And I was always worrying about when things were not perfect. I try to be perfect for my clients as well too, and to make sure that, I was being present for them. And because I wasn't able to be present for them, I did have to stop that. Well, this is a huge wake-up call for me. One, because it could be the death of me. Honestly, the doctor did tell me that if the tumors or the masses got any bigger, I would have to get them surgically removed. And if I didn't, they could potentially grow big enough and become cancerous. So that was a wake-up call for me to kind of turn my life around, at that point. And I really felt like at that point, I was at the bottom of my emotional barrel. I was crying a lot, like I said, during that time, and, really trying to figure out how to do better. That's when I realized that I needed coaching. And so I started not only, on top of taking medications that my doctor wanted me to take, in addition to the therapy, but I started coaching myself as well. And in coaching myself, I spent a lot of time on just reflecting on the basics. And my coaching program, my 360 health coaching program, does focus on the basics. It focuses on the nutrition, fitness, environment, and then also the mind as well too. And so I looked at those 4 elements. I started with nutrition. And based on the test results that I had from my doctor, I found out that I was deficient in a couple of vitamins. One was iron. My ferritin, which is your storage for iron, was non-existent, and I needed to get my iron levels back up. So I started taking an iron supplement, which I highly recommend if you are deficient in iron. However, if you are deficient in iron, don't take an iron supplement because it could hurt you. So it's only if you are deficient. And so definitely find out from your doctor if you have the proper nutrition. And, at that point, I started to look at my diet a little bit more closely as well, too, just to make sure that I was eating foods that were healing me rather than harming me. And foods that don't do well for you could be like processed foods or, non-whole foods. And so I really looked at that. And not only did I look at my nutrition too, but then I did look at my physical activity. So I, at that point, was maintaining physical activity well, but I needed to amp it up at that point just to do a couple of things. One is that it's healthy, for you, but then also that it's something that where I can relieve stress. So I started kickboxing. And in kickboxing, that's really like high intensity interval training. Or HIIT training, and it really helps you to kind of spread things out and to release some stress. And then also, after my kickboxing gym shut down, unfortunately, I started Pilates. And Pilates is really working on your core, your inner muscles, to be able to work strength from the inside out. And I love that saying, because working from the inside out, that's what I was doing as well too. So those 2 things really did help me. And now that I'm not doing Pilates anymore, I am really looking at my new fitness routine and diving into Apple Fitness Plus, and really working on that combination of eating well and then also doing the things that I should be doing for my body, which is working out. That could be walking, running, strength exercises, and then also strength, or not strength, but stretching exercises too, like yoga. So then the third thing is that in addition to nutrition and fitness, I also started looking at my environment. And when you look around you, and this is both your physical and digital clutter, those are the kind of things that can really slow somebody down and to make them feel overwhelmed in their space. And so when you start to physically declutter, and this is something that we covered in episode 2 on feng shui, is you start to declutter your own mind too. And that's part of the stress and overwhelm that I was feeling, is that I was feeling surrounded, if you will, by these things that were asking for my attention all the time. And so if you do that to your digital and your physical clutter and you declutter, you're going to help your mind. And so that's something that I concentrated on as well too. And then lastly, is that you concentrate on your mind too. What are the things that you're telling yourself? And I love a couple of things that I did, at this point. One is that if I am a big fan of the Life Coach School, Brooke Castillo, and Brooke talks a lot about the model for her. And her model is that there's a circumstance that you're in, and your circumstance is completely neutral. So for me, I was imagining all of the stress and everything that I was encountering from work and being mom and just living life in general and everything. I was imagining everything was a bear to tackle. It was, something that was completely stressing you out. And it was my own thoughts that were causing this. So it's your thoughts that you're telling yourself that causes the feelings that you feel, and the actions you take because of those feelings and how you feel. So, and that creates your circumstance, in the end. So I was looking at the thoughts that I was telling myself, and the thoughts I was telling myself is that work was overwhelming, work was stressful, being a mom was stressful, and all of those kind of things. And those things were not really serving me very well in my thoughts, and they were definitely hurting me. So when I look at changing my thoughts, you need to move through, and we talked about this before, of the growth mindset, versus a fixed or negative mindset. And the growth mindset is your positive mindset. But in order to change your mind, it's hard for you to move from a negative or fixed mindset just directly over to a positive or growth mindset. And so in moving and making that transition, you have to move through neutral. So when I was thinking about the amount of work that I needed to do, and maybe that I didn't have enough resources to be able to do my work, and, that I was feeling very helpless, at that point, I started to then think, what I could do? I could do something that they call the 30-day kindness challenge. This is when you have a point in contention, or, a thought, about something that's creating that barrier for you to grow in that particular area. There's a reason why. And a lot of it is because of what you're telling yourself, about that person or situation. And the 30-day kindness challenge is usually to work on relationships, but you can also take it and use it for other things in your life. So maybe you don't have such a great relationship with somebody, but maybe you don't have a great relationship with you and a healthy way of eating or working, or something. And so those are the kind of things you want to look at to say, how can I make this better? And there's 3 ways that you can make it better. One is that it's the things that you're telling yourself about it, so about that person or about your situation. And rather than tell yourself all those negative things about it, change the script on that, flip the script, if you will, and say, that you're going to think more positively. So, for work, for instance, I kept thinking, I don't have enough resources. I can't do the high value things that I would like to do. And, I'm meeting a lot of barriers. And so at that point, I can think instead, you know what, let's move through a place of neutralness rather than go right to positive. I can't automatically say I have enough resources. I am doing the high value things. I couldn't say that in a positive way. But what I could do to move to neutral is to say, I have resources. There's high value things that I want to do. How can I get my resources to do those high value things? I'm talking about people here, and trying to get the work done. And then the second thing is that I wasn't going into every single meeting very positively. I was thinking in my head, oh gosh, what actions are going to have to take for that meeting? And I was going into meetings in kind of a negative light. And that's terrible, to go into a meeting and not to feel positive about the meeting. And of course, if you're not going to feel positive about a meeting, it's not going to end well. And it's that hard realization is that you do have to move into things positively. So when I was telling others about my work, was I talking negatively about it, or was I talking positively? So that's the second thing. First thing is, what do you tell yourself? Second thing is, what do you tell others? And then the third thing is doing something kind every day, for yourself or for that relationship. So if it is a person that you're doing the kindness challenge with, that is if that you're doing something kind for them, or like saying something kind to them as well. And so for work, I was trying to say something positive about my work every day. And in addition to that, I was also making sure that I was doing things kind for myself to set myself up better for success. So keeping on top of my to-do list and really feeling like that, I am on top of that, but then also just making sure that I did the things, the kindness for myself to set myself up, for success too. And that is scheduling, don't put things off, schedule time, to talk to, people about things. So there's a lot, that you can do. Couple of things that we just talked about. One is that changing the way that you think about things and what you're telling yourself about that. Remember, that is that thoughts that create your feelings, that create your actions, that ultimately come to your circumstance that you're in. And then, and that comes from the Life Coach School with Brooke Castillo. And then the other thing is the kindness challenge, and how can you change your relationship with a person or with whatever is bothering you, and doing it that way. And the kindness challenge is a 30-day kindness challenge. So try it for 30 days if you are having problems with something. I will link this in the show notes of these couple of resources that I'm talking about here. So what I'm doing is, I am moving forward, and I got to say that my path to recovery of the depression and the anxiety that I was feeling as well too, was leading to all of my stress that I was feeling, the stress that caused the ailments in my body, and the way I was thinking and everything. My road to recovery was not completely linear. It wasn't like I went and saw the doctor, got the diagnosis, got on medication, started seeing a therapist, got, better both physically and mentally, and, just kept getting better and better. No, in fact, what ends up happening, and I'm telling everybody this because I want you to learn something from this too, is that it was a cycle, if you will. And it was a cycle that I kept going backwards on. So I would make a little bit of progress. And then, I would have an emotional meltdown of some sort, because of dealing with all of the stress that I was doing. So I kept going to the bottom of my emotional barrel over and over again, which is something that we talked about in episode 1 with Lisa, is that, that emotional barrel or kind of that hole that you dig and everything for emotions that you dig for yourself, is that hopefully it gets shallower and shallower every time. And it was for me. I felt like I was at the bottom of my barrel, and I felt like I, because of my diagnosis and, all of this kind of stuff, I felt like I was dying over and over again. And that's kind of how it felt for me, is that, I was just like, okay, I was like a phoenix, where I would die and then I would turn into burn up and turn into the ashes, and I would rise again from the ashes. And maybe I would do this over and over again. And that's okay, because I knew that my barrel, if you will, would get shallower and shallower. And it did. And I finally feel like I am at a place where I can do this podcast again. And I can open up for business again for my coaching. I finally feel that I'm here to a place that I can be here for my clients too. So with that, I am going to be switching my coaching focus a little. I was concentrating just generally on health and wellness, but now I'm going to do a bigger concentration on stress management. And helping with that. Over the last couple of years since I released my last podcast, I have been working a lot on reading about stress management and doing a lot of work on myself, to do that. And now I feel like I'm a place that I can share this with others and help others, in this area as well too. So I'm super excited, to say that I am actually closing this podcast. And I'm opening up a new podcast. And the new podcast is going to be on stress management. And I want to say that I am open now to taking on clients again. So if you have been waiting, which I know a lot of you have been waiting, to be able to coach with me, I really want you to know that I'm ready, and I'm here for you, to be able to help you on your health and fitness and your stress management as well too, if you have stress or anxiety or depression or anything. So if you are dealing with stress and you want to find ways to combat it, and you're feeling stuck and you're not sure how to go about it, just go over to SamanthaElizabeth.com to learn more about my coaching practice and how to get in touch with me. And like I said, this is the last episode of this particular podcast. I'm going to be opening up a new podcast, and just stay tuned. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But I want to thank everybody for listening to this podcast and taking the time to walk with me, in my healing journey, and to be able to really take a pause and to focus on being who I need to be, and being able to focus on my own health and wellness. So thank you so much. If you enjoyed this episode, head on over to SamanthaElizabeth.com to check out more about my coaching practice and to coach with me.